Perfect. We're live on both LinkedIn and YouTube. Sorry for the delay, guys. We had a slight echo technical difficulty there. Thank you so much for hanging around if you're still here. And I've got my chat up at the side so I can keep track of all of the questions that drop in the chat. There we go. And I am really excited for my guest, Laura, to join me today. This is a huge topic in Q4, coming into the end of the year, but also I know that so many leaders, founders, and C-suite executives deal with a lot of issues that we're going to talk about today as they go through their career or business journey. And so many people that I speak to on a regular basis just feel so weighed down at the moment with everything else that's going on in the world alongside what they normally would have to deal with. And I shared a post about this today, which was really something quite personal. And I know that I've spoken to Laura so many times about this, and I would love to get her perspective on a lot of the things that you guys have been saying, you guys have been dealing with. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Laura. I'm going to let you give yourself the most amazing introduction because I can't do it justice as you could. So I'd love to introduce Laura Larios.
Oh, thank you so much, Bella. It's such an honor to be here today and to be speaking with you. And thank you all of you who are here live and those of you who are watching the replay. So yes, my name is Laura Larios. I am a nervous system and HRV coach. I'll talk a little more about what that means in just a moment, but essentially my coaching is neuroscience based. So I work with a lot of high achievers, high performers, those in like C-suite executive positions, founders, CEOs, VPs within companies. And really my goal when working with these individuals is to help them to prevent burnout and even recover also from burnout. And I do this through, again, a neuroscience-based method through the nervous system. Yeah. So really the goal when I'm working with clients is not so much to, yes, reduce stress, but actually just give you the appropriate amount of stress. Because like Bella was saying, like there is just stress, right? We live in this is a very intense time we're currently going through in terms of just, recovering still from COVID. Then, the economic transition that we're in and just technology ramping up. And there's a lot of exciting changes, but also just a lot of change in general. And so that is going to create stress for everyone. And so my goal with clients again is to help you to be able to recover and be more resilient to that stress so that you can still show up and live your best life in your careers and also within your personal life as well.
Amazing. I mean, so I know a lot of people don't really know the correlation between your nervous system and really burnout or business stress, not just business stress, but burnout and that correlation. What is that correlation between how your nervous system responds to burnout and what it can cause from it and do for it?
Yeah, great question. So essentially when I'm working with clients, I'm working with their autonomic nervous system, which is called ANS for short. Yeah. And it's this brilliant system that we have in our body that's essentially in charge of our survival, right? So it's connected to our survival brain. So the brain stem, the back of the brain here. And so when it comes to burnout, for example, essentially what's happened then is that survival brain has just been on for too long. Yeah. So we need the survival brain. We need fight or flight. Like probably most people have heard that term before. We need, sometimes to go into a little bit of shutdown in order to conserve energy. Again, this is a brilliant mechanism that our body has. The issue becomes when we're chronically living in these states. And for the majority of people that I work with, in particular, like I mentioned, who are founders, who are also corporate executives, there's a lot of stress, yes. And the issue is their body and their nervous system is not properly recovering from the stress. So it's not that the stress is bad. It's just that there's too much and they're not recovering enough from it. And so that's what leads to the burnout because the system isn't resourced enough, essentially. So we're not getting enough sleep. We're not properly digesting food. Our HRV, which I'll talk about in a moment, it starts to be lower. And when we have a lower HRV, which is our heart rate variability, that is essentially what helps us. The higher it is, the better our resilience to stress, essentially. So the nervous system is the main foundation also for our ability to be creative, strategic, and have those executive functions turned on in our brain. So when we're primarily living in survival because our nervous system's in a survival state, we won't have as much access to the parts of our brain that essentially are our money makers as executives and as founders. So that's another big piece I work with clients on, is being able to turn off the survival part, or lower some of that response, so they can have more access to the part of their brain that is what is, helping them to be successful.
That's, I mean, it's fundamental, isn't it? That's huge. I mean, if we can't have access to those creative elements, those strategic elements, and actually what makes us, like what makes us special, what makes us unique, and access our expertise, at the end of the day, the longer we're cut off from that, the longer we're sat in that survival mode, like you say, it's almost inevitable that you do end up burning out, because we can't operate the same.
Exactly. We weren't designed to live in that state
Yeah.
24/7. And that is what a lot of people are living, or predominantly. Like, I have a few stats here I'd love to share with
Yeah.
everyone. This is actually from the APA just last year. So only 21% of corporate executives, founders, leaders are only 21% are actually in a state of what's called the growth state, which is the ventral vagal state of the nervous system. This is when you feel present, when you feel creative, connected, you can problem solve, you can be strategic, you have high emotional intelligence, you're change ready and energized. So those are all the things we all desire, right? But only 21% of people are actually living in that state currently. And then 52% are living in the fight or flight response. So more than half of leaders and corporate execs are living in a fight or flight response. So this is more of that lack of focus, feeling stressed, anxious, perfectionistic, rushing, having difficulty with boundaries. And 27% are in a freeze or a shutdown response. So this is when we start to see real, like, the stages of burnout in terms of like brain fog, procrastination, trouble focusing, lack of creativity, and difficulty in making decisions.
Wow. And that's shocking, because you would think that actually the most successful founders probably wouldn't be in this state, and for them to not be in this state, they would be successful. But actually, that is a staggering number of people that aren't operating in the right way. They're operating reactively, but their nervous system, and I can probably name a few people that I know. Obviously I won't, but I could obviously name a few people, and I could, off the top of my head, from the conversations.
Yeah, and what's really powerful too, just like, look, first of all, I just want to say all these stats just make so much sense, and there's a lot of variables that can have contributed right to these stats, and so some of the things I mentioned earlier, like with COVID, like we were seeing some of these higher percentages before COVID, but then once COVID happened, like these numbers just kind of skyrocketed even more in terms of people living in that fight or flight or that sympathetic response.
Yeah.
And then again, just the consistent change, that we're consistently going through currently, whether it be with technology or the economy, business restructuring, right? Yeah. And so the good news, though, I will say that after engaging in nervous system work, though, you can increase that by 60 to 90% of living more in the growth state, more in that ventral vagal state. So if you have been like primarily noticing you're living in fight or flight or sympathetic, we can reverse those numbers, and we can get you back up into the growth state.
I mean, what would that do for a business experience to be able to continually be in that state of growth?
I mean, it would just be, it's a superpower.
Yeah.
You really would have an edge in so many ways in terms of, again, like being able to be proactive, be innovative, be creative. A lot of people right now, they're reacting versus responding to the changes. And so if you were more in that growth state, you could actually respond versus just react all the time, right? You'd have more energy. You'd be able to connect better with yourself, your family, your team members. It'd be, better communication, higher emotional intelligence within the company. I've seen it. It's pretty remarkable what happens when more people start to live in this growth state in terms of what is possible, not only for revenue. We've been seeing really huge increases in revenue when you're living more in that growth state, but also just being, having less issues with turnover within your team and attrition, and which is very costly, by the way, and burnout.
Wow. And I think I've seen like some of your clients that you've mentioned have come through huge strides just since working on their nervous system.
Yeah, huge.
You mentioned HRV. Now, I'd love to talk a little bit about this, because the topic of our conversation today is obviously about tracking this one vital. You are wasting hundreds and thousands of professional dollars. So we're obviously at this point referring to HRV. What is it, and what does it do in relation to wasting so much money if you're not tracking it?
Yeah. Thanks, Bella. So HRV is it's called heart rate variability. So it's essentially a quick and accurate way to measure and understand how much stress your body's able to handle, or how much stress it's currently under in any given day. So it's almost like your personal like gas tank meter, right? It's
Yeah.
telling you like how full your tank is and how maybe if you're running on low, essentially.
Yeah.
And HRV is essentially measuring the state of your ANS, your autonomic nervous system, and its ability to recover from stress states, such as fight or flight. And HRV is essentially a measure or variation in between each of your heartbeats, so which is controlled by your autonomic nervous system. So it's not the heartbeat itself, it's the variations in between your heartbeats. And so what I found, particularly also for high achievers or high performers, they will often state they don't feel stressed. But when I look at their HRV scores, it's telling a completely different story. So it's like their HRV scores are actually quite low.
Wow. So, I mean, I don't want to get you to look at mine because I think that would just tell a tale. But how can someone go about calculating this?
Yeah, so that's another great question. So there's numerous ways, which is really exciting with the technology we have. Like, just I think even just 10 years ago to try and get this data, we'd have to go to a doctor's office. You'd have to have a certain monitor. Now there's apps available. So there's an app I use called SORCE. You also have an Aura ring you could use to track HRV. There's a Whoop app or device as well you can wear on your wrist. And so all of these devices, what they're doing is they're measuring that metric for you and just sort of letting you know, like, how is your body recovering from the stress? Again, I want to emphasize we need a certain amount of stress. We need our bodies to go into some amount of sympathetic. The issues become we're in it a little too much. And so when we can have, again, higher HRV score, that's essentially showing that, we're able to appropriately recover from that stress and have more resilience.
Yeah, it's like they say, you need a certain amount of putting yourself out of your comfort zone to be able to progress, because ultimately if we're stuck in our comfort zone, we're not going anywhere. Whereas if we put ourselves in a slight bit of stress, a slight bit of uncomfortableness, it gives us the opportunity to actually be able to respond. But then, like, too much, the overwhelm just gets way too much, and that's when we can't manage it. I mean, when someone would be to go into a survival state, what tends to happen aside from their HRV being low? What can tend to happen from that? Like, what's the reaction?
Yeah, so there's there's several.
Yeah.
So what I've seen, some common ones, I'll just kind of list out right now in terms of when someone's been chronically living in that state.
Yeah.
We start to see migraines, we start to see insomnia or difficulty falling or staying asleep, essentially. There's digestive issues that start to happen. Getting sick more often, like having colds, like you frequently, just like consistently feel like you're getting over a cold. Then there's elements too in terms of the physical aspect, and there's also the mindset aspect. So when someone's consistently living in a survival fight or flight response, for example, there's a lot of urgency behind thoughts and the behaviors. So it's like things like, I must answer these emails or texts right now. There's so much to get done. I can't rest. Why isn't this working? I can't slow down. There's not enough time in the day. If I don't make my clients happy, they're going to think something bad about me. Yeah. I haven't heard back from my client. They must be upset with me. Tightness in the jaw as well. So a lot of jaw clenching, which that's what leads to some of the migraines. So there's a lot of just reactionary kind of urgency, making impulsive decisions too. I work with a lot of execs who have made some impulsive decisions, for example, just even with their money, where they'll start to see something happening within the company or within the stock exchange, and they just they'll make a sudden decision without really taking the time to really think through what they're doing, and that's because they're in that fight or flight response.
Yeah, I mean, I could see myself, and I know quite a few others, in a lot of the things that you've just said. I spoke to somebody else as well more recently about, and I was explaining in a post today and also on Instagram yesterday, that over the past 3 years from the dentist, I got a night guard to sleep with because I'd had jaw clenching and grinding my teeth during the night. And this was not something I was consciously aware of. This was more so something that is subconscious. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people that they've been dealing with things for years and they've not really found a reason or a cause as to potentially why this could be. They've not actually sort of, this is not how I should be. This is not normal. And I always just thought it was stress, that the stress would go away and so would the grinding teeth would stop. And to add a little bit of context, this on Saturday night, I didn't wear my night guard. And Sunday, I was out with a serious migraine, like all day, just from not wearing my night guard. And I assumed that it was because of that. But I would love to get your perspective on it, because there was someone else I spoke to that grinding their teeth during the night is something that they'd been dealing with as well. What would be your perspective on that?
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, by the way, just personally, Bella, because I know it can be not always easy to just share some of these things personally that's happening for us, but also it helps so many because it actually is very common, specifically amongst a lot of, again, high achievers and high performers I work with. They talk about a lot of jaw clenching or migraines or tightness in the jaw. So there's several reasons. One of the primary one is that your nervous system. So it's in a fight or flight response. So even at night, our system is ideally should be sort of downshifting, right, and going into more of that rest and recovery. However, for some individuals, the system has been more cued again to be more in sympathetic, so they're not downshifting at night. And so stress chemistry like cortisol, for example, can be increasing. And when we see higher levels of cortisol in the body, that's when we also start to see more of the jaw tightening and the clenching and the grinding. And again, that's of course leads to also some of the migraines. So it's essentially, so the nervous system, and this is a lot to talk about with this, but I'll say it just as simply as I can, is like for some individuals who have a lot of this jaw clenching or migraines or things like that, the system doesn't feel safe to slow down. It doesn't feel safe to rest. So you have to rewire the system to actually associate rest and recovery as safe. And again, it doesn't make sense to us cognitively because we know cognitively we're safe, but to our nervous system, which is again a survival aspect of our brain and our body, is saying we're not safe in rest and recovery. And so we have to rewire that pattern or pathway essentially.
Yeah. And I know that obviously that's a lot of the work that you do. And it leads very nicely on to my next question is like, when it comes to nervous system work, what does that really mean? I mean, you talk about rewiring the brain, but talk to us a little bit about nervous system work and what that generally entails.
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple things. First of all is just becoming aware, number one. So when I work with clients, either privately or within a team, we just start to bring some awareness. Like, where are you? Are you more in the green? Are you in the growth? Are you more in yellow, right? Like that fight or flight response, or are you now in the red, And so just knowing where you are is like, can be so helpful and so, empowering just to even know like, oh, it's not just me, it's like this is my nervous system. So that's step one. Then step two is actually helping to cue your system to just a little bit more safety, meaning like, let's say you have a lot of sympathetic energy like most high achievers do, and we need again a certain amount. So the issue becomes when there's too much, so we actually need to just apply a little bit of brake so that you can like still drive the car, but just like you're not like going over 100 miles an hour. So essentially I give my clients simple nervous system tools to help apply just a little bit of brake to the system to bring down some of that sympathetic energy or overdrive. And so when the system gets more cued to like slow down, essentially, it starts to understand like, oh, it's okay to slow down. Again, it's not enough just to tell yourself cognitively, because it doesn't speak that language. So you have to speak the language of the nervous system, which is through these neuro tools that I provide my clients to apply that brake.
Almost like find your happy place and go to the happy place.
Right, exactly. And it's funny because it's over time, right? It's like even certain things that we wouldn't think should stress us or would stress us, to our nervous system and living in that state over years and years and years, it just starts to attribute almost anything as stressful, right? Or potentially as a threat or a stress. And so we want to interrupt some of that. And that's what I do with my clients. And so over time too, what happens is we release a lot of that stored stress in the body, because what's happening too is over time we store it. And it hasn't, if you think of your nervous system as this glass, for example, or this mug. And so you have like work stress, you have, personal stuff in your life, right? Then you have health stuff, and like this glass can get very full, or this mug can get very full. So my job is to help decrease some of that
Yeah.
water that's in, or tea or whatever you have in your mug here, to
Yeah.
decrease that, so you have more space and room, right? And this, because you need room in here for the creativity, the innovation, and all the things, right? So that's essentially what I'm doing with these neuro tools, is helping the system to lower or release some of that load that's in here. And then the third piece I sometimes will also do with clients is help them to rewire a lot of subconscious beliefs. So first
Yeah.
we have to increase capacity within the system, meaning we have to lower, some of the stored stress. And then the last sort of final piece is to rewire some of these, what I call nervous system subconscious lies, and which is driving some of that sympathetic as well. And so once, I'll just list out a few of those lies, and I'm sure maybe some people are going to relate to them, is
Yeah.
I must do everything myself.
Yeah.
I'll be happy once I achieve X, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I can't show vulnerability. Success solves everything. I'm not enough. I can't take breaks. I can handle everything. Failure is unacceptable. My identity is my work. I have to follow a set path. And these are just a few examples of some of the top ones that I see. And so it's also going in and rewiring some of those beliefs as well through a process that I take my clients through. It's a somatic process within the body. So we're not using so much of the cognitive brain. We're actually, working more with the body itself and rewiring those beliefs.
Wow, you wouldn't have thought you're so right. It's often the things that we truly like fundamentally that we believe about ourselves. It's almost like we've built this whole religion about our personality, who we are as a high achiever, and what we should be doing and what that entails to be able to get success. And then once we kind of reside ourselves to that, it's really hard to be able to step out of that. And that's probably why the deeper work and the rewiring is so vital, because until we kind of find the root cause and reframe it. And okay, it kind of reminds me of a point in Don't Judge. If no one's seen the Vampire Diaries, you won't recognize this at all. So if you're not a Vampire Diaries viewer, but there's a point that she loved someone, and she got one of these other vampires to rewire her brain to find that point where she first fell in love with this guy. And from that perspective, he managed to find the root cause of that and get her to reframe how she thought about the situation. It almost sounds something is like we're actually finding the root cause of where it's telling us that we are that type of person, that we have that belief, and changing it so that belief isn't there anymore.
Exactly. So a lot of these beliefs I've found is what's really also driving the nervous system to be in that highly sympathetic or fight or flight response.
Yeah.
And it's really, what's interesting too is, I'll just also mention, because sometimes high achievers or the clients I work with think, well, but this is what's giving me the success I have today, and what if I I don't want to lose that, right? And I just want to tell you that yes, it is, you've done probably tremendous things and you've gotten tremendous success. And so again, we're not taking away that sympathetic energy. Like, we're not going to slam on the brakes. We just want to give you the appropriate amount for your nervous system to do all the things that you want to do and make the changes in the world that you want to make, right? And have the success that you want to have. And so there's nothing wrong with success or goals or wanting to achieve things. In fact, it starts to become more accurate. Actually, I feel like you spend less energy and less resources reaching your goals when you're living more in the growth state versus achieving goals in that fight or flight response.
Wow. And I know so many founders that say they attribute what they've learned so far because they've burnt out, or they've failed so many times. And don't get me wrong, I think I can't attribute failure to that, because I think it's two very different things. But I know, for example, that I've burnt out, and I would say I've taken a lot of learnings from that, and I probably wouldn't be where I am today without it. Now, that's not to say that I can attribute my success to burning out, because no, I don't think I can. I think it's actually left a lot of trauma there. And I know for so many founders that they would probably have to say the same is, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't have the success if I didn't burn out and learn from it. But what do we say to those founders? Because I almost get this impression that it's seen as the norm now, that you have to burn out in order to achieve any kind of business success. You've got to push yourself to that next level and, in essence, break your nervous system down. I mean, I'm seeing two sides of this. I have to say, there's founders that have that perspective, but then there's also some that I'm seeing huge strides where they are working 15 hours a week and still getting huge success. They have shaped their lives around what lifestyle they want to create for themselves, and they're good. They've gone to that next level. I mean, what do you find the differences between those two and your perception on that hustle side of it?
Yeah, this is another great question, Bella, and you're right. And so, oftentimes we can wear it as a badge of honor, right? That we burned out, and we triumphed, and we sort of risen from the ashes, so to speak, right? The phoenix rising. And there is some power in that, and I don't want to take any of that. If that's something you experience, and you did learn something from going through something like that, I think that's amazing. And at the same time, I just want to say that I also see cycles of burnout over and over. So for some people, what I've seen is like they burn out. Maybe they did learn some things, but they're still not working at the nervous system level. So they might like understand it from a cognitive standpoint, like what happened to their body, what happened in terms of like, again, like the lessons they learned from the burnout, which is again great. But it's like if you haven't still changed the baseline of the system, you're just going to go through the cycle again. And so did you really learn? And I've seen a lot of founders who actually, they learn on a cognitive level, but not like on a nervous system level. And so they're still operating there. And then in terms of your question though, about like the differences I see between someone working, let's say 15 hours a week, it's also not the number of hours, I would say. I mean, yes, to some degree, of course, like there's, some founders are working, 60 plus hours a week. And then there's some that, like you said, work 15 to 20. So it depends on where you are in business, depends on what, obviously, yes, what your goals are. Obviously, you're in a startup, you're probably going to work more hours. So I'm not going to tell you that that's like, you're only going to work 15, like you're at a startup. So you're probably working a lot. Really what it is, again, is like the recovery, right? So like, can you give yourself the ability to recover? And bring more intentionality to what you're doing, because I see a lot of founders just kind of like just moving, and there's not necessarily a lot of intentionality behind the moves each time. And it's so powerful. And some of the most powerful founders I've seen and experienced have been the ones that are so intentional and strategic in every move. It's not about overthinking. It's like just about being very, very present as to what's happening and being able to respond appropriately in those situations. They have way more people that want to collaborate with them, way more people that want to do business with them, right? So that's the other thing too. It's like, got to stop taking this badge of honor that it's all me and I got to figure this out, because the most successful founders I have worked with have been ones that have been more in that, been able to embrace more of that intentionality and recovery time. And then being able to form more partnerships with people, and they actually get to where they want faster in some respects, because going slow in order to go fast, essentially.
And I think you've got it right. It is less about how much time that we're spending on it. It's the situation around it that we're in that helps us to get there in that time. Because I know that when I do a really long week, I can have my nervous system can be in a great place and I can feel it because of the progress that I've made, versus I could be doing slightly less in my week and actually the procrastination is so much more because it was probably a really stressful week. So it was one of those weeks that challenged and tested. So it really is the differentiation between that surface level work and that deep work, to be able to take what we think we know and we've learned through, to actually being able to find the root cause and kind of understanding that on a nervous system level versus a cognitive level. And I love that comparison. It kind of goes deeper than, and we always talk about it in branding and marketing, for example, and same thing with our clients. We always need to know our clients on a deeper level. On a marketing perspective, we don't need to, if we talk surface level, we talk generalization, we're never going to be able to get our clients to buy from us because we're not actually talking to what they want and need specifically. Well, it's the same thing, I guess, in this instance. We talk surface level to our nervous system. We're never going to be able to solve those root problems.
I love that analogy, Bella. That's exactly it. And I also just want to say that again, this work is about timing your efforts.
Yeah.
This is about, so it's again, not about stopping and doing nothing. It's not one extreme or the other. It's timing your efforts. Think of a race car driver.
Yeah.
Like there are certain turns they have to make right on the track where they have to lower a little bit of their speed in order to make that turn.
Yeah.
And they didn't stop the car to make the turn, but they're timing their efforts. They're timing the speed of the car, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for your nervous system. And it's a black belt skill,
Yeah.
to be able to walk into a room and have a nervous system that's more in the green, that's more in that growth ventral vagal state of being able to be really present and observe other people in the room and to really gauge things and to know, like, when is the time to say something, when is the time not to say something. I mean, it's a superpower. So I'm just going to tell you right now, if you're all into superpowers, this is one of them for sure, is your nervous system.
I love it. And I love the analogy of a race car. I mean, as someone that is really into Formula One, this means I understand that a hell of a lot. I mean, if someone is struggling with this right now, I know we covered a little bit about what they can do. Like, if they were to listen to this, they were to go away and they were like, this is all the things that I'm feeling, what is the first thing they can do? Is my first question. And two, if they want support, how can they get it?
Yeah. Okay. So number one is I do want to give you just like 2 things you can walk away with today that literally take you anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute that is going to help to just apply a little bit of that brake. So getting back to that race car analogy. So you're still going at a good speed, but you're able to just make those turns, right, in a way that, is appropriate for you and for your system, and to keep those executive functions on is what you want. So the first one's going to be, you're just going to so you're going to kind of loosen your jaw just slightly. So just kind of bring some attention to your jaw and kind of just open the mouth just slightly. Notice your tongue. And then you're going to take the tip of your tongue and place it behind your upper front teeth. And then I want you to flatten your tongue to the roof of your mouth. So you're just going to press your tongue up to the roof of your mouth. And you're going to hold for roughly, just about maybe 20 seconds here. Breathe through your nose. And go ahead and release. You might notice there's more saliva in your mouth. You might notice there's a feeling of wanting maybe to yawn, or maybe your shoulders dropped a bit. So the roof of your mouth is full of calming cranial nerves. So when you press your tongue up there, it's like you're engaging some of those cranial nerves, right? So that's number one. You can do that anywhere too. A lot of my executive clients love this one because they can do this in meetings. They can do this when they're in line at the grocery store. Like, no one knows you're doing it, so it's very easy to do. The second one I want to give you is an eye exercise, and there's 2 ways you can do it. Number one is you can just keep your head straight like this, and then just look over to your right. So just move your eyes over to the right, and not straining your eyes, but just looking over and holding here for, saying, like maybe roughly 20, 30 seconds, or until maybe you notice a deeper breath, maybe more saliva in your mouth. Maybe the pace of your thoughts too just begin to just slow just a bit. So if you've been noticing a lot of racing thoughts, maybe then you're doing this eye exercise, they start to slow a bit. And then you'll do a couple blinks, and then you're going to do the other side. So you're going to look over to the left. Same thing, like 20, 30 seconds. So those are 2 really easy ones you can do at any time during the day. Now, this last one I'll show you. This one's more like you're going to be using a little bit of your arms. This is really good though in terms of like neck and shoulders, which a lot of people tend to hold a lot of tension in our neck and shoulders, right? Which also then contributes to sometimes headaches and things like that. So placing one of your hands, I have my right hand here on your head, and just tilting it towards your right shoulder and opening up the left side of your neck and shoulder here. And you might just notice, like, if it feels tight at all, just noticing. And then you're going to look up towards the ceiling, and you're going to hold here for the same, just roughly 30 seconds, or until maybe again you notice a deeper breath or more saliva, or the pace of your thoughts shift a bit. And you can go ahead and release that, and then just take a couple of seconds just to kind of even notice if there's any difference between the right and left shoulder. And then you're gonna do the same thing on the other side. So left hand's gonna go on your head, you're gonna tilt towards the left and open up the right side of your neck and shoulders, and then you're gonna look up towards the ceiling. And same thing, just roughly 20, 30 seconds. And just noticing any changes in breath, saliva, thoughts, warmth in the body. Good, you can go ahead and release. And you can do it longer too. You can also do it less. So if you notice within 10 seconds there's a shift, you can also go ahead and release. Everyone's going to be just a little bit different. And just the last one I'll share is another really simple one you can do at your desk. And so again, when we're more in sympathetic, it's harder to get full breaths in because these muscles around our lungs and our abdomen get very, very tight here. So we're not getting full breath in through the day, right? And so that also can contribute to more brain fog and just feeling the sense of urgency. So what you're going to do is as you inhale, you're just going to look down towards your hands or your feet. And then as you exhale, you're just going to slowly, and I mean slowly, vertebrae by vertebrae, look up towards the ceiling. As you exhale, stretch out the neck. And then same thing again, just slowly bring your head down on the inhale. And you're going to do that 5 times roughly. And again, just very, very slowly.
Yeah.
And you should notice again that like maybe you take a deeper breath. You start to notice maybe the thoughts begin to slow just a bit, or you just start to feel more like connected, more present. Again, because those executive functions are coming online just a little bit more because you're getting more breath into the body.
Wow. I mean, those are amazing. I mean, I followed along with you and I already felt almost weird, slightly heavy, like when I did the head, slightly top heavy, weirdly. The saliva thing is bonkers, like really nuts how it can bring saliva into your mouth. So, I mean, if anyone is watching this or watches this back, I would love to get your thoughts on those exercises immediately. If someone wants to get in touch with you, because I realize I've just looked at the time, we've gone over slightly. We could talk about this for ages. If someone is looking to work on their nervous system with you, how can they get in touch with you and what have you got going on for them?
Yeah, thanks, Bella. So you can get in touch with me via LinkedIn and or my Instagram, my social media, or my website. I'm always over there, so you can just shoot me a message. So I have a couple different options. So if you want to work with me one-on-one, I work with clients one-on-one, minimum of 3 months. We work together because it takes 62 to 63 days to form a new neurobiological pattern, essentially rewiring the brain. So I do have that option. And then also I currently, my business partner and I, Kate Ross, so if you have a company that you're in or you work with a team and you're looking to, again, like help your team with real behavioral changes. So not just about corporate wellness, this is about actually like you're looking to bring more creativity or innovation or increase energy or essentially help with the turnover that might be happening within your team, or you're going through some big change or merger. So we come in and we do, these trainings, workshops, but also coaching, quarterly coaching to help you and your team with your nervous system to really make long-lasting changes.
Wow.
And those reach out to us about that.
Yeah, I was going to say those are both in person and online.
Absolutely. Yes. Both in person and online. So my business partner and I do offsites. We just came back from one in Atlanta. We did with a VP sales team that was highly, highly successful. And so we do offsite and in person and online. Yeah. So just reach out to me or to my colleague, Kate Ross, and we'd be happy to have a chat with you about the needs for you, your company, and your team.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Laura. If anyone has any questions, any reflections from this session, I know a lot of it's quite personal when it comes to this topic as well. If you would like to be connected with Laura, I will drop all her details in the comments of this so that anyone can access it. But I would also like to say that if you would like to get in touch with her, or you'd like an introduction, feel free to reach out to me. And I'm happy to make an introduction to Laura. I know firsthand that she does amazing work. I mean, she's just displayed that to all of us on here. So it's amazing. So thank you so much for coming. I will make sure to tag Laura in any questions in the chat so that she can make sure she responds to those as well. And if you're watching the replay on both LinkedIn or YouTube, I would love to hear your thoughts. And thank you so much for joining us, Laura.